All right, thank you, Evans, there with the comrades, Professor. That was a good ride, and I believe that the government, truly, if they are listening, we should be talking about how to see how Nigerians will keep alive with what the government and the labor union, as the NLC, have on the coffers for ongoing negotiation to see how we get these things resolved on time. But back here in our Abuja network studio, we shall be looking at, although we're still on the subsidy removal, but this time around we're looking at the negotiation method by this new administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And let's see if it's this the right way to go about it. And don't forget that before he came into power, we had so many unions threatening to go on strike. Even there are some that actually went on strike during his time, like the health workers union that went on strike. And soon as the president came on board, he was able to bring them to the discussion table and suspended that strike. So also the NLC and other union maritime workers also were on strike, and the president was able to see how he ended that strike, also all for the interest of the country. But so many persons are still looking at the body language of the labor union itself. Some persons are already accusing them of compromising. You know, you wake up one morning and said you are embarking on a strike, and then the next minute you're already chickening out, if I should use that word, you chicken out from your initial plan to go on strike. But let's see if all this decision by NLC is, like they claim, for the interests of the common man on the street, given all the yardsticks, all these statistics that they brought to the table, and all the reasons they gave for them to have agreed with the federal government to call off the strike. But I have in the studio this morning to look at this. Another issue is the political economics analyst, Adefolari Olamireko. A very good morning to you.
Good morning to our viewers, Ali.
Now, I know you moved a discussion from the studio. Let's begin from there. You know, the Professor Stella there actually made it clear that this is not the first time we're having government and LSE going to the negotiation table. She makes reference to ASU, and they've been fighting for more than almost a decade now, 2009 to this very moment, and nothing has been done. Let's take it from there. Do you see sincerity in terms of government negotiation with union bodies like this?
It is going to be very difficult to see that particular sincerity, although government may have the intention of seeing some of their demands met, but the reality on ground in terms of maybe the funding, the resources to meet some of those demands will be the challenge that government normally have at the end of the day. Like the experience we're having right now, there's a 7 month demand from labor, which government is okay, they're going to look at certified. Don't be surprised that if at the federal level it is accepted, at the state level it may not go down well, and that's where the bulk of the challenge is. Even the ASU case that we are talking about, that the professor was making reference to, all the demands that have been made, the federal government is capable of meeting them, but where they have issues is at the state level. Although we understand the court case that strike out or allowing government not to pay them for that 8 months that they went on strike, that one is understandable because it's a court ruling. But the demand properly, presently on this subsidy issue, you can be best assured that even though it's a 200,000 naira minimum wage that the labor is asking for, I know it's a benchmark for the negotiation on the table. It may end up become 100,000. But implementing it at the state level and the private sector also falling to implement such things, that's where we have issues.
But we see that in the time past where salaries, wages, increments are always on the table for the federal government, the state government. Just like you mentioned, the states are finding it difficult. Up to this very moment, the issue of the 30,000 naira minimum wage has not really been in so many states of the federation. Now, what is the connection between salary increments and then trying to get government to make available what is necessary to alleviate suffering of Nigeria? Is it just salary increments that we need?
It's beyond salary increment. Okay, if we take a look at these current issues right now, they are talking about the of our four refineries, that railway system to be brought on board. They are talking about making our roads motorable. They are talking about inclusive economic program that will not just capture the civil servant, the public servant, but including ordinary Nigerians. They are talking about a situation whereby the corruption in the system of subsidy can also be eliminated. They are also looking at a framework that will ensure that government sustain this process of oil and gas sector in a way that we will not be talking about subsidy again forever. Because those are the 7 demands that's on the table. And government has, okay, let us see how we can form a committee and get it done. The issue of remuneration in terms of wages, I know that one can be passable, but at the federal level, it can be successful at the federal level. But where we're going to have issue is at the state level. Let's also look at the issue of the 4 refineries coming on board. And for now, said is interested in making sure that the refinery comes on board. Are we
going for a new refinery, or we're still doing the maintenance?
No, they talk about the 4 refineries, and they're also talking about giving opportunity for state to build refineries and also allowing private investors to also build refineries, where the 4 refineries will be revitalized, at the same time revived, and again, the government must also build new ones. Those are the demands, part of the 7 demands. But where I normally have, for me, on that particular one is that we have spent about 11.39 trillion on that same 4 no result. Maintenance, and there is no result. The same people who collect the contract, the same people who are involved in the process will still be called to come and engage in this. Are we sure that these people are ready to ensure that this thing works this time around, from the government side and from the labor side? That's the one. Then the issue of wages, I've talked about that. The federal government can definitely get their own settled, but the state government just need to look at it. Then railway system. The railway system at this point in time is not just going to be for federal government alone. Are the state also ready to make use of railway? When the prof was talking about Edo State, I was thinking that maybe she would mention and talk about the mass bus transport that was before the current governor of Edo State came on board. Where are those mass transport buses? It's not there. And instead of giving people 3 days off for work, why don't you just bring your own palliative as an initiative of the state? And these are the things that state government need to do. So on a 7-point agenda recommendation of what they are going to do, the state, the subnational government, what is their stake? What is going to be their role in all this? We talk about fixing the road. It's not just going to be the federal government road that is going to be fixed. What about interstate road? What about intra-state road? What about state road in the municipal area from the river? What are they going to do about it? So when federal government is taking initiative to ensure that it gets its own side of the ball addressed, if the state fail to do anything, definitely whatever the federal government is doing is bound to become something that will
okay, before we look at the 7-point agenda, just like you're trying to analyze them, now what most persons is looking at now is the way and manner I was able to handle issues with striking unions as soon as he came into power. Like I talked about the health workers who actually are suspended their 21 days warnings strike. We have the maritime workers also, they all suspended their strike. Now, from the actions taken by the president, what's your own definition of his own negotiation method in terms of handling issues like this? Because we know severally there have been meetings with unions and it's to go into hours, days and nights, and they'll tell you it's ended in deadlock. But this time the president was, the time frame meetings and negotiations were very short and the strike were called up. Let's look at all that and know how, see how the president wants to handle striking unions.
I think to take off is to look at the speech of the president during the inauguration. He said, I'm going to consult widely, I'm going to dialogue, and I'm going to govern, I'm not going to rule. What it translates in my own understanding, I'm going to communicate with everybody. And the difference between his own strategic way of engaging with the union and the previous government was that the union comes with their demands, and he tells them that it is possible, but we have to look at the ways to make sure that this thing works. If we look at all the unions that said we are going on strike, it is all about demand for increasement in salary, review of their salaries, and from his own angle, it is possible. But let us sit down and see how it's going to work out. And that has shown the difference between the strategic and tactical ways of it communicating and accepting their demand. Previous government don't accept demands of workers. If you check previous government, the moment workers say we want this work, they'll say no, it's not possible. And that's why workers normally go back and get angry and they'll put services off and they go on strike. But for him, the strategy is using that once workers make a demand, he accepts it. And he will let them know that it is possible, but let us sit down and see how we can get it done. Like the 7 demand that the union asking for 200,000 minimum wage. He never told them that it's not possible. But what he asked of them, let us sit down and see how we can make it workable. And that is the best way. When it has always been, no, it is not possible. No, we can't get it done. There is no resources. If you look at all the argument that the current president is putting out, he has never mentioned that there is no resources to take care of the workers. If you check out, even the statement from his people that he's sending as representatives, none of them is saying there's no resources. None of them is saying federal government cannot do it. None of them is saying it is not possible. But rather they are saying, okay, bring it forward. We need to look at it together. And that has been the differentiation way of from what the previous government were doing that make workers to be from what he is doing. And it's very good for him in the sense that it will now make workers and union to now say, okay, this is someone that can listen to us. Even though we are making a demand and we know that we have put a benchmark, we can go into dialogue. We will not just bang the table, but we must negotiate, and superior argument will take the day. And that is what he is putting across. And we should not also forget that he has been someone that, from the progressive side, especially the way he was able to unions and workers when he was the governor, he listened more to the workers' demand. He take their they want, and he never tell them that it's not possible. And that is same tactics he's still using today. And that is why when the unions met 2 days back with the Nigerian Labour Congress (TUC), when they make their demand, he didn't say no. He just said we'll work together with what you have demanded, and that is what is.
But you heard what the professor from our Benin studio said, that the person heading the federal government team this time as our new chief of staff to the president, as the outgoing speaker of the House of Representatives, Gbajabiamila Miller, was the one that cajoled them, let me use that word, to call off their strike with the promise that God would look into most of their demands. But down the line, most of those demands have not been met. And you are saying that this administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been able to listen to the people. So are we confident that the team, or rather the person of Gbajabiamila Miller, would fulfill this word under the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
Definitely. One thing is I can't really speak for him.
He is now representing the government.
I cannot really, what is on his mind now is to settle. Back then, during the ASU strike issue, you know what kind of information we are hearing? ASU were saying that promised them they are going to take care of their whatever salary, whatever. The man came out and said, no, you only mediate between them and government so that the strike can end. But when ASU members were angry with him was that 8-month salary they now lost out as a result of the court ruling. That's where they are angry. And right now, the review or whatever ASU want now, it has been taken into consideration. That's why I see that they have gone back and nobody is talking about, okay, whether they are paying them their new minimum wage or they are not paying them their minimum wage as they speak. But we don't know that there's something done for the ASU member. That's why they call off the strike. Not just ASU member, including Sasanu. But the challenge now, right now, is that the same person is now heading that same negotiation of the government. We should expect good things to happen. We should not be negative about what's going to happen. But what we must note is that, from my own understanding, is that when federal government want to do something, they do it not with the intention that they will fail, but they want to do it. But as the present government have put it, they are not complaining of what other successive government have been complaining. So the first complaint from government is that, if you understand what the Minister of Labour was saying at that time, that government doesn't have the resources to take care of it. But in this present situation, nobody is talking about we don't have resources. But rather, let's sit down together and see how we can do things and do it. And I think that's the best way to go. And now, I will just want to assure everyone, let us give them the opportunity of that they can do it and do it rightly. But the experience with, we all know what really, as you speak right now, 8 months such as loss that is making them to be angry. And that is why the professor have to just say that this person say we'll do this, they will help us to get this thing done. Right now, he didn't do it as expected. But as the agreement be met, and his ASU member are they enjoying a new salary scale now? They should tell us.
All right, let's not dwell so much on ASU. We're looking at the NLC and the negotiation method of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, you understand that NLC is like a body that speaks for Nigerian workers. And by the time they from that negotiation, meeting with the federal government and read out their communique with the 7 points agenda they want to look at, so many persons felt that NLC has betrayed the trust of Nigerian workers. Is that the case?
Actually, I'll put it this because myself, I'm also become very. I think there was the best foot out of for the negotiation last week, and they came out and they were like, no, it's like they didn't get what they want. They quickly went to the press and said, we are going on strike. They would have waited because there was a meeting scheduled after that one that failed, that they didn't get a concrete agreement. They would have waited. But the way people are now saying they disappoint them is this. When they came out of that meeting, they just went and said, we are going on strike on Wednesday. For the negotiation because the meeting continued over the weekend, because when the federal government met so messy, and when they met Tuesday, they have a concession from the Tuesday side. That's why they now brought two of them together and said, okay, this is what what can we do? But because NLC went ahead by Friday evening and said we are going on strike without waiting for the meeting to continue this week. I wish it is after this week they now say that they didn't get anything, they announced better. But that particular week they now announced like people were hoping that okay, but we strike. So that's why they put their best foot forward, but they put it out wrongly. They would have waited at least, because the announcement of subsidy gone was within just 1 week. So people are now hoping that, okay, within that period, let us see what the negotiation will be. But they just announced. And most Nigerians have been trying as much as possible to express themselves through the strike. We're waiting for strike to happen and demonstration to happen. And now they're saying that NSC have disappointed them. That is to them. But I don't see that NSC disappointed anybody. Rather, NSC is also on its own, is very tactical. Because it's not every time we bring people to the street. Even though in 2012 that most people are making reference to, we bring people to the street. It was also tactical. By the end of the day, they still went back, although it was still negotiation that solved the issue.
But don't forget that even before this administration, the last NLC leadership of Ayuba Waba, we had similar instances where they pronounced strike, and then after some hours they call off strike.
Because at that point in time, if you see where I put this argument is that they would have even give a time frame before they announce strike, because announcing strike means that you are not going back to have initially say you want to take from the government, but now announcing strike and still coming back again and turning it. That's what disappointment is. What I'm trying to point out is this: they are giving a gap, let's say a week period, even 2 weeks. Didn't you see the way the health workers declared their strike? They say we are giving 21-week ultimatum before we declare any total strike. Did NSA do that last week? They never. They just, after 2 days, they just say we are declaring strike. They would have given, okay, within this period of time. It is expected, because a very tactical, intelligent labor leader must give that room for negotiation. Because if you quickly conclude and seclude yourselves from the negotiating table, definitely your people will lose. But the health workers understand that. That's why I say we are giving the government 21 days ultimatum. After that 21 days, we will do this. The same thing with ASU will totally declare strike. They will do it partially. We will 21 days. After 21 days, we will give you so partial strike. After they will now go full-time strike. But NNC was too agitating and too forwarding. And that's why I said they put their best foot forward, but they put it wrongly. They would have given that space. And now people are seeing them to be a mistrust organization. I don't want to see them like that, because I'm also part of them. And they have only done what they could do within the time frame of their thinking. Because that thinking was that, let us take this deliberate action and see what the reaction of the government will be. And for this particular government, they are ready to take the long on. Even if NFC have declared strike today, the government will not back down, because the current government have understood the link whereby our resources are going. If you understand the Nigerian economy, throughout 2022, NNPC was not giving the government a dime as revenue, because they said they are doing turnaround. And now we have been exposed to several debt as that subsidy. And that's why this current government say we don't want to follow the trend of what the previous government did by going into debt. And you know, one of the things that make Nigerians to be so angry with the Buhari government was that it was the proclivity for debt, proclivity for loans. So this particular government is not interested in that. And one of the cheapest and the simplest way to get the government in debt is through subsidy. Due to NPCG owing 2.8 trillion. And meanwhile, there was a 1 trillion in the budget for the for 6 months. So the question is that where the 2.8 trillion comes from? For Nigerian Labour Congress, they are able to do what they do right now. There's another opportunity. June 19 is from now. They can try, they can still declare protest, but they intelligently. For the time frame, them.
Between now and June 10, we've talked about some of the agendas they on ground, and the committee will be set up to see them look into it. For immediate palliative or amelioration, what should they be putting forward?
Most Nigerians, I'm not the palliative to the palliative in terms of shit, because
no, we talk about palliative. It's not just about money. We know there are so many.
That's what Nigerians are palliative. That's what everybody.
The transport sector, we talk about salary increments. All these are palliative that the governments are bringing on table to see how to ameliorate the suffering of Nigerians as a result of subsidy removal. But you know, there are 7 of them.
Exactly.
The governments definitely will not be able to achieve them all at the same time. As a quick result, what should they be going to the wait? So that we don't have this instance where they come out from the meeting, Nigeria looking again and thinking NLC is not doing enough for them.
The best impact is on transportation. And we know that federal government doesn't have its own transport company. So how are we going to make sure that at the state level it happen fastly? Everybody will be calling that government should go and buy buses, government should go and buy buses. It's a good idea, but we are buying buses for palliative. Just last year, they had some buses in Abuja. I don't know whether you have a look of those buses. Are you seeing them on the road again? So for me, the immediate thing that government do transportation. But how are they going to do it that it will not be a wastage of it? Is where I'm very, very fearful. Because if they wasted money in buses, and those buses will not stop to 2 years, some of them will disappear. But now, can the government parley with NC, National Union of Transport Owners, Union of Workers? Can there be a partnership with them? Or can there be a partnership with a private entity that owns transport vehicle? Now, so okay, let us see how we can inject transportation into the system without putting too much burden on it, and government will waste money. Because in the past we have bought buses, but we can't. So that is my own concern. The thing is this. See, another hit of this particular subsidy, if we have electricity in a day, people will not bother to buy PMS to power their personal generator. These are the areas that people spend much money.
Well, you still need fuel to fill your vehicles.
That's why I'm saying that if we can have electricity, all of them that are doing electricity to generating, but transmitting and distribution. If you can have electricity for 18 hours across cities in Nigeria, it will be good. That will be good. And on that aspect, we now reduce, because they say it is also subsidized. It is subsidized, paying for estimated bill. Even though the president has promised that there is going to make sure bill will work for us and work for the good of Nigerians, can we have a drop in the cost of electricity Friday at this point? Can they make a proclamation that estimation bill that we normally pay 15,000 has been reduced to amount, and we can have that light husband? It will go a long way. About the long-term one that talk about rail system, fixing about aspect of our health, because the health will be another area that government need to give palliative, because people will go to hospital to go and pay bills. Can we also have a slash in the amount we are paying for services in the government hospital? And because these are the areas that people will spend money, and there's no money because we are spending too much on transportation. But if we take care of these areas, it will go along with them. We'll also talk about the education. Most of the federal universities are increasing school fees. They are increasing school fees. Is not talking about it. we also have a to, so if it's have been increased across board in federal university and state university, can we slash it? Because we are talking about palliative. Because these are the areas that people will be spending money which they don't have because transportation is eating it. So I mentioned education, I mentioned the transport system, and also mentioned the area health. So these are the areas that I consider. If we put palliative there, it will be more easy to not to waste resources. We should concentrate in that people money and giving them money for buying food. At the end of the day, it will be hijacked. The real people who are getting will not get them. Will end up making it too political that even when you ask state government to come and collect their own palliative and go and give it to their state, some state government can decide to go and store it and they will not. Or if you get money to go and use as salary, they will remember they are owing debt somewhere and they will say they are using that money to subsidize.
But the issue, there's an issue the NLC raised before waiting to go on that strike, which was supposed to comment, that they want a reversal in the pump price of petrol. Why they go to negotiation table with the government. But do you see that happening anytime? So do you see room for that also, for government to look at, okay, let's see how we can revert the cost of petrol? You know, when that announcement was made by NNPC, it was for their own ask,
exactly, not for general.
Not general, but the other independent marketers just key into it, and then we saw that a panic buying that in filling stations. The issue of reversing probably not the old price, maybe slashing down the cost of petrol. Would that be part of what NLC should also be looking at, or we should just go by the points you just mentioned and then allow subsidy to go and Nigerians should keep buying fuel? But don't forget that oil marketers very soon will start fixing their own prices.
Definitely, it has been fixed.
So people now, if you can, wherever you can get your product, you get your product and you fix your price.
Exactly, because right now, what really happened is that for the reversing of the price, it wasn't a part of the 7-point agenda.
It was something Labour was actually calling out.
That's why they quickly called for that strike, that if they don't reverse it, but event have overtaken it. That's why they have that clear cut they want to work to. So reversing the price they stand today is not part of it. But rather what the government and what Labour is also looking at is the demand of the product. Because as we speak right now, there's a proclamation that NNPC will stop the swap policy. And that alone is an issue, because that is the secret of the corruption in the oil and gas sector. Because NNPC are doing swap with oil and Momo, that is the major oil, will give them crude oil, bring refined product to us, and at what quantity. So that has been proclaimed that it should start doing oil import by themselves, and there's no import it by family for 600 naira, go ahead. But you know that competition area the government is looking at, the competition by as their product is like the supply is not disrupted. If filling station 8, 3, 4 all having one will definitely want to bring down its price so you can have customer. But the IPMAN people, this is their own problem. They are buying from heavily people of the marketers and goes there currently now. And the is 480. They transport it because their own problem is that it is transportation from different places, from Lagos. If they are not buying from Lagos, Kano to the rest of the country, that's where the price increase because of differentiation in terms of transport. And that's what the filling station they say 620, 650, and now the work that government have brought bodies importing by themselves and selling and doesn't have an in your what you import, but they can sell at the price that fluctuating or it will come down. So that price to address. But we also know that the middlemen in this are all interested in profit. And that's why people are still calling that it is not going to be a deregulation by paper alone. Government should look at what this set of people are doing. But where we have challenges is this: if government should make any announcement that sell at this particular price, it means that these people can come with the excuse of collecting extra money from government. Then we have gone back to the era of subsidy again. And that's why the current government wants to avoid. They want to avoid that essence whereby we say sell at this price. No, they want to avoid it. Even NNPC is a company on its own. It can fix it because it's also importing for itself. But when government now say we have a cap price for everybody, these guys will still come back with papers and say you asked us to sell at this price and we have sold at this price and we are now losing. I think that's what government is trying to avoid. But the price reversal that NSC called for initially, I think event have overtaken it with the new 7-point agenda, and they are not looking at areas where it can benefit us. Because the key point we must take away, congratulate NSC for is that the foreigners are now being demanded that they must work and they should stay on it. If you know that in the previous time, it has always been that government wants to sell the refineries, NSC will say no, But now, that one is not on the table. Nobody is selling any refinery. And I give kudos for NSC for still standing till today that no refinery should be sold. Rather, the refinery should be revived, should be reworked and revitalized to produce the crude oil, the PMS that we need, the kerosene we need in Nigeria. And that is the way to go. But the private sector that will also invest in it, then, and the state government also have opportunity to also invest in this sector so that we can all be gainful and impact the economy going forward.
Well, we keep talking about the state government, and you mentioned earlier the issue of implementing some of these agendas will be so difficult for state governors, especially when you look at the kind of some states are generating. Now, today, like you have been in studio, the of those states actually back in civil servant in that state to 3 days, 5 to 3 days. It's just its own way in how you could reduce the suffering of civil servants. But what other palliative or other military method or should be put in place in states? For instance, you cannot compare a state like Ebonyi and states together. Now, what should these states be doing to see how they can actually reduce the suffering of their people while we wait for the federal government to do that? You rightly mentioned about the buses. I know before we used to have the Shopee buses, we have the air fire buses and all that. That to be found.
Exactly. So now for the state, I think the state, that is what they think they can by reducing how many days they work and how many hours they come and work. But what is the implication of that on the economy of the state? What is the terms on administration of governance in the state? It has its own negative effect. But for me, if I'm to be in a position to advise them, the numbers of days coming to work is not the solution. Working immediately. What the workers are interested in transportation. How many state government staff bus? It's only federal government we normally know that have staff bus. So those state government, what they would have thought to do immediately is to provide buses for their staffs. It's not reducing the numbers of days that they go to work. Because if you reduce the numbers of days that they go to work, file will be kept. Governance will somehow, stifle in terms of taking action, taking process. Okay, now you reduce the days of they going to be going to work, and there's a project to be supervised, there's a work to be done, there's a traveling to be made, there's a report to be made. Now, the workers, and we already know that civil servants in our own climate won't do per se. When we have 2 people, 3 people chasing one action or one particular assignment to be. So reducing the number of days is not the solution, but provide means of transportation for them to go to work. That means they should have for staff buses. In Abuja here right now, we are seeing federal government staff buses. Whether I don't know where they kept some of those buses initially, but normally this kind of situation came in, we started seeing new buses. I don't know whether we have come across them. New buses coming from new chassis buses. State government won't tell you they don't have money to do that, but rather they're looking for means to reduce the numbers of days in work. And what that will portray is that corruption will be entrenched in governance. They know, because things will be done in a way that to bring about fast tracking means that support the state, rather it will going to bring negativity on the state. And this is what I mean. When workers know that they are only coming to work 3 times, they will do things that will ensure that fines can be kept away. And they come back and they will say after they have been told to come to work 3 days in a week, I'm not coming.
But some of them may be forced to work at home. Remember the incident of the COVID-19. That was also the same declaration like this by some state that some particular grade should work from home. Don't you think probably such technology deployed during the COVID-19 will be introduced as a means of ensuring that the workers remain active?
How many states did that? It's only federal government I can boastfully say that really tried in ensuring that there is remote work from home. How many states did that? Okay, we can give kudos to FCT Abuja, but how many of the states? Because it is even more expensive, because now you are going to go buy server, you're going to be spending money on data, and don't be surprised they will say they want to train some workers on how to get engaged in remote work and what would that be? Training, expense, data, bringing consultants to begin to train people on how to use all this kind of system. Is it now more expensive than getting cheaper transport for the workers to come to work?
I must thank you so much, Dave Olamilekon, the political economics, for your insight this morning, and I hope this will be a discussion for another day until we get it right with our country. Thank you so much again for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Well, this is where we end from our Abuja Network studio. Evans?
Yeah, Dominic, I'm still here, and just like what your guest there, was trying to suggest for state governments to come in alternatively, I want to kind of give an advice. The state governors providing buses for transportation and all that is good, but they should look for buses that are cost effective, buses that are easy and cheap to maintain. Because some of these buses, most times, they don't run on fuel, they run on diesel, which is also a problem. Diesel is not cheap, it's expensive. So they should look for buses that are cost effective, so that at the end of the day, it won't be a situation whereby you're trying to solve a situation but adding to it. So fare subsidy, from the look of things, may have come to stay. So we should begin to look at the benefits rather than thinking about the immediate effect of it now.
I agree with you in that aspect. Even if you look at Lagos State now, they have even electric cars introduced into their streets. So if that will be looked at in other states, it will also go a long way. So I would look away from the fossil fuel that's even having an effect on our environment.
Okay. All right. So this is how we draw the curtain from Benin Network Center. And nice to have, we had you here in Benin and also part of the world, because we live stream. Tomorrow, let's do the same thing tomorrow again on the program this morning on ITV.